New York City, home to 8.5 million people and by far one of the most culturally diverse places on Earth. On March of 2020, the first case of Covid-19 appeared in the city, spreading faster and faster, hitting 12,200 cases by April 10th. By that time, New York City was already the new center of the global pandemic. Claiming a total of 32,500 victims, the major peak of this crisis has been declared over by the official authorities. However, the precautionary measures are still under effect and severely encouraged. Come discover with us how these new rules have modified New York's panorama. Let's explore the streets of the Western world's capital as the COVID threat seems to be finally starting to give up. As the first day of shooting begins, and after months of staying inside, we head to the Highland Park, which is now starting to reopen with a free time entry reservation system policy during the first day of operation through September 13. The city's subway stations look empty now. What once was the crowded public transportation on Earth doesn't feel the same. For the locals, this doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing. All year round, New York City usually receives up to 66.9 million tourists, and those tourists have to move somehow. With the new international policies and travel restrictions, the transportation demand naturally came down, providing for a lot of New Yorkers a very unusual, quite almost empty commute ride. Exiting the station, we face the vessel, center of the by many reasons controversial Hudson Yards project. Keeping our way to the park, we spot a lot of businesses with signs on the front, indicating the precautionary measures taken by the establishment. At the High Line entrance, the park staff will receive you, check your previously made online reservations, and provide you with instructions on their new safety measures, which include several hand sanitizer dispensaries along the park. Masks, of course, are required. Heading back home, a protest was the spot. It is no secret that the United States is currently facing a very interesting social struggle. In this case, the protesters, most of them wearing masks, were marching against police extrajudicial executions, racism, and debates that have recently taken a major role in the public political atmosphere and media. The New York subway system used to transport up to 4.3 million people every day during an extraordinary 24/7 scheduled service. Today, the subway's demand is considerably lower and the operational hours have been reduced, keeping the stations closed from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. This, in order to clean the whole system like never before, as part of the measures to prevent the spread of COVID-19. According to the New York Times, riding the subway when taking the necessary precautions may be safer than you would expect. This is possible due to the reduced concurrency and the positive attitude taken by the civil population, which mostly decided to follow the precautionary recommendations. The first stop of the day goes to Grand Central Station. Inaugurated for the first time in 1871, this station, as today, with over 44 platforms, remains as the biggest train station in the world. The station, which normally would receive a little less than 1 million visitors per day, looks considerably emptier today, while masks and constant hand washing are encouraged on the screens and speakers. Stores and restaurants are mostly closed here right now. Continuing on our journey through New York, we find ourselves in Bryant Park. Right behind New York's public library, Bryant Park offers a safe open green space to relax and sit down for a minute among the endless concrete that covers the city. Among the park, you'll find the various hand sanitizer stations and the various signs asking you to take your precautions. During the summer, a few events usually take place here. From little plazas to family reunions to picnics to big concerts, the place is filled with life. And maybe in 2020 will be the same. Since we are here, let me share a tip with you. If you ever find yourself in desperate need of a restroom and you happen to be nearby, Bryant Park has the fanciest clean public bathroom in the whole town. Bright screens, lots of noise, and lots of tourists. That's what usually Times Square means. But today, these streets remain empty as the travel restrictions keep people away. But not everybody. For some nationals, this new restriction may actually represent a good opportunity to visit, as again, everything is empty. Let's hear what Vanessa has to say about it.
We're here today in Times Square with
Vanessa.
Vanessa. Would you please let us know how has your experience been, in the New York attractions with all these new COVID restrictions?
So I've been here in New York for 2 days, and for the tourist side, it's good because all the tourist points and attractions, they're empty. So the pictures are great, but all the other cool attractions that are inside, we cannot do it. So like it's a two-way street. So, but I'm enjoying my time here in the summer. The city is beautiful. It's a little bit too hot with the mask, but we get used to it.
Thanks, Vanessa. Indeed, you get used to it. Over and over during this pandemic, it has to be proven scientifically that wearing masks does not reduce your oxygen levels. So please, wear a mask. The last stop of the day takes us to the south end of Manhattan. Part of the MTA, the Staten Island Ferry is since 1997 a free transportation system that connects Staten Island to Interborough subway system. Before that, residents had to pay 50 cents to ride. Outside, the shiny sign is hard to miss. On the inside, the stairs to the boarding platform will receive you. The service runs every 30 minutes and masks are severely encouraged since this is the main connection Staten Island residents have to the MTA network. It might be overwhelming at boarding, but on the insides, the ferry demands for you to keep your social distancing. Staten Island is home to 476,000 people, and granted, it might not be the happiest borough of them all, even though according to the census, it is the wealthiest one. Despite that, the views from the ferry are just stunning, and this is where I share another tip with you. If you enjoy ferry boat views, just take the ferry, and you won't regret it. During the pandemic, transportation has been an issue here, and different drivers are implementing different measures. But this plastic screen between the drivers and the passengers is very common. Once again, masks are required. The Arlo Nomad Hotel on the 34th Street provides an excellent view and location for this film. It is easy to notice how the hotel industry has been impacted to traveling restrictions as we face an empty rooftop and halls. During the pandemic, the average occupancy of hotel industry was around 20% countrywide. Here, the Hilton, the Edition, and other hotels had to close. All the way to Brooklyn, The subway stations keep showing this yellow pause indicating their social distancing policies requirements. Brooklyn's Borough Hall was completed in 1848 and has witnessed already 2 global pandemics and a devastating fire in 1895. Today, it faces a small farmer venue. This year wasn't particularly good for these small community practices. The smell of fresh lavender wasn't in the air this summer. As we continue our journey and enter the Brooklyn Bridge Park, these posters start to appear, and they'll keep appearing all along the way. At the right end of the park, you'll find the Brooklyn Ice Cream Factory. Remember, masks are severely encouraged on most businesses. Let me share another tip with you. All along the city, you'll spot these blue bike stations. City Bike offers you a chance to rent a bike and enjoy the city. As a biker myself and on my own experience, New York City is one of the best places to make a bike your transportation way. To unite Manhattan and Brooklyn, both boroughs decided to join efforts in 1883 and build what back then and until 1889 was considered the world's longest bridge. Either you've decided to rent a bike or not, keep in mind the signs all over the bridge indicating the one track for people and the one track for biking. Please be considerate. Time for another tip already. Most people don't bother on actually crossing the bridge and decide to stay on the sides, leaving the middle banks almost always empty. You must note that during the summer, crossing the Brooklyn Bridge is a nightmare. The fact that tourists are away represents a very strange opportunity to walk an empty bridge. And if you ever get too tired, just remember that here you go, girl. The only reason this documentary was possible to film was the constant use of sanitary precautions embraced by the city residents. So please, don't be this guy. When in public, wear a mask. Six skyscrapers conform the new World Trade Center at the end south of the island, 4 of which have been already completed. This new complex currently empty of visitors intends to serve as a tribute where the Twin Towers used to be prior to 9/11 incidents. The zone displays different architectural vanguards and observation decks, making it one of the most Instagrammable places in town. The Oculus is an underground mall built as part of the new World Trade Center complex, and its design was in charge of Santiago Calatrava, who seems to keep recycling design concepts along his journey. Just like the rest of town, the Oculus invites its visitors to respect the social distancing. The mall looks empty as inside door stores remain closed. It is very common to see posters similar to this one all over town. The platform stations underneath the wide structure keep running, being possibly the main source of people on these now empty halls. On the outsides, and with an over half-kilometer height, 104 stores and 73 elevators, inaugurated in 2014, the One World Trade Center building remains today as a new symbol of the city, just a few meters away where the Twin Towers used to be. Right next to the tower resides Brookfield Place, a very nice mall part of the original World Trade Complex Center. After 9/11 events, a total inversion of $250 million was made on this site, leaving as a result one of the best places to take a lunch at. Currently, most of the stores remain closed to the corona's impact. However, some restaurants allow pickups or, and please keep in mind, card transactions only. Dining areas remain closed all over town, but honestly, if you come here, you might as well just want to enjoy the outside area. Heading north, we're back in Midtown, where the now closed Radio City Hall, home of the Rockettes, keeps waiting for the reopening of entertaining venues. The Rockefeller Center consists of 19 independent buildings covering from 48th to 51st Street and was the first design complex hood in town. At the center, the ring usually filled with diverse activities and where it's almost impossible to get a table, seems empty for the first time. Around the tower, and as part of the city's guidelines, the stores at the Rockefeller Center display their precautionary measures before you enter. The main Comcast-built tower remains imposing in the background with 70 stores, waiting for tourists to be eventually back. On the other side of the street, and since 1879, St. Patrick's Cathedral keeps providing some religious services such as masses. Again, precautions are encouraged during your visit. Today's attendance was low. The fourth and last day of shooting begins here, Van Wyck Boulevard Station. Outside, the iconic Plaza Hotel faces an empty summer. This building opened in 1907 with an initial cost of what today would be $68 per night. Now owned by Qatar government company Qatar Hospitality, the plaza now also provides condominiums after the 2005 remodeling. In the heart of Manhattan, Central Park represents a perfect fusion between the shiny reflecting glass and steel from buildings and the green of nature, making it a perfect place to exercise and leave behind the daily stress of the concrete jungle. With a perfection that resembles a George Spear work, the pointillistic beauty of Central Park awaits for the next station. Outside the park, and as the world starts to finally realize why having monuments erected to glorify the memory of genocide might not be the best idea, Colombo Circle remains surrounded by barricades and cops to prevent it from being vandalized by protesters. On the way to the next station, we found this. Please, when you're inside the subway, wear the mask. After all, it is mandatory. Near NYU resides the Washington Square Park, a place that's usually filled with energy and art demonstrations. Even though the pandemic is currently going on, you can still feel the beat of New York. Going south, the streets of Soho District, as well as their businesses, remain empty. The iconic red-colored district is the result of the late 19th century architectural career towards steel. What once was the Red District of New York City is today home of closed stores. Some of these streets are already opening to a dining service as the reopening process of the city keeps going on. And so, we come to the end of this first documentary. As the last shoot showed, and as we've seen, New York City is built out of steel. But steel does not break. Steel does not give up. And neither will you, New York. A pandemia ainda não acabou. Líderes mundiais e cientistas concordam que o inverno pode complicar as coisas. Por favor, fique em casa e use a máscara.